Thank you very much for this interview. Earlier this week you said Wikileaks is going to step up the publication of Cablegate. What's the latest revelation?
Oh, we're pushing things through the Netherlands now, and you can see that on NOS, and many other countries. We've done 3 media partnerships in Brazil. You can see stuff coming out in Accra. Others that are coming out from Norway, many countries. Australia, my home country, also has had some substantial political shifts as a result of material coming out there. What you've seen prior to this was the 5 big media partners, Guardian, Der Spiegel, New York Times and El País, pushing material out, and Le Monde, pushing material out in their respective language groups, and mainly for items of interest to the West, or seem to be of significant interest to the international view of what Western culture should be. But to my view, the greatest value in this material is to the smaller regions, because it is in the smaller regions we see more fulsome disclosures. We see a less cautious language used by diplomats in their correspondence.
Could you give an example that stood out for you?
So, some examples that stood out to me is in a case in Australia where one of the chief power brokers in the Australian Labor Party, someone who just put the current Prime Minister into power, was going to the US Embassy for years and years, in fact was listed as a specially protected source, and informing them on what was happening with Parliament. And the language used was that Mr. Abdib had been US Embassy contact throughout his political rise. And this is coming from someone on the left of Australian politics. And that same equation is repeated in every country that we've looked at in detail.
Yeah, you saw one of the Dutch cables, which was, you thought, quite striking as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and a similar case for the Netherlands, where we saw, it's the foreign minister, is that correct? Yes. Where we saw the foreign minister prior to the recent Dutch national election going into the US Embassy and swearing his fealty, his sort of loyalty to the United States, and saying that, well, once they get into power, there will be a much closer relationship with the United States, and in many different matters, political and military matters.
A lot of the Dutch cables are on the Dutch military mission in Afghanistan, and the way the Americans tried to influence Dutch politicians to extend that mission, that didn't happen in the end. We see now a new Dutch government, who is planning to wants to have a new police mission in Afghanistan. Release of these cables, is that a coincidence now what we see, what the Dutch government wants?
It's not a coincidence. We had Dutch journalists coming to us and saying, look, there's going to be this vote on the 18th in Parliament, and if there is material that is relevant to that the people would be interested in, then it's got to come out before then. So we have a lot of work to do with all these different countries, and dealing with all the attacks on us by the banks and these legal attacks from the United States. So we have to prioritise which country we're going to try and help get out this material for first. So in the case of Brazil, as an example, the government was ending at the end of the year, so we made sure the Brazilians had cables that were relevant to them. And this particular case for the Netherlands, well, there's this very important vote in Parliament. So we listened to what Dutch journalists said and tried to get this out to the Netherlands before that vote.
Does it actually mean you're trying to influence that decision?
We're not trying to influence the decision necessarily one way or the other, but if you think about it, this material is not... We didn't write it. the US government wrote it. To that degree, it is neutral in that it was written for internal consumption by Washington. So if there is important information there that would affect the outcome, and we released it after the vote, then that would be a great failing by us. If the information there could affect the vote, it has to come before.
Yeah, but you still would consider yourself more a publisher journalist than an activist in that sense.
We are an activist we're an activist organisation in only one particular sense. That is, we believe in the rights of the people to know what is going on, and the rights of the press not to be suppressed. The prior restraint should not be a factor in publishing, and the historical record should be sacrosanct. Once something is published, there shouldn't be a way for people to use pressure to take it out of the historical record, as we're seeing so much in the UK especially. So we are an activist organisation in the sense that maybe Reporters Sans Frontiers is also an activist organisation, that we believe in this right, we push it very strongly, and in our own work we follow that philosophical view that we have.
It's been almost 2 months since the start of Cablegate. What have you achieved, do you think?
I think diplomacy will be divided, international diplomacy will be divided up into a pre-Cablegate and post-Cablegate period. I think I said that some 2 months ago, and I believe that is still the correct view. It's not that there's going to be something like going from a Cold War to a non-Cold War. Not that strong, but the understanding that all these small countries have of the big system, the big Western empire that they are slotted into, that's something that is new for diplomats in those countries and for the people of those countries. And that's going to shape the framework in which political decisions and diplomatic decisions are made into the future.
Your organisation strives for more openness. Isn't there a risk that diplomatic traffic is actually going to be more concealed after this, or that diplomats won't speak their mind anymore? They're going to be more secretive in their communication, so it actually has an opposite effect.
Well, if you look, secret between who? So if you're talking about, can two dictators communicate with each other, be confident about communicating with each other in secret, why do they need that secrecy? Well, you say, oh, well, sometimes diplomatic discussions need secrecy, of course. But on the average, do they actually need that secrecy? Or is that secrecy used as a mechanism to conceal plans that people would rebel against? And because that's what we see in our work, that in general, there's specific cases that are exceptions, but in general, secrecy is used when the broader public would oppose a plan or an action. And so the more open governments are in general, the more their plans and actions have to fit with what the population demands. Because if they don't fit, they will be opposed. And when they're opposed, they are harder to implement. And if they're harder to implement, they will not be implemented.
Do you still accept there's still a need for a certain amount of secrecy within diplomatic traffic, that you can't have anything out in the open?
It's clear that there are occasions where people, where there's maybe some tensions and people want to speak frankly with each other. In any serious case, that can still be done. People can go to meet with each other and speak frankly. You can have a delegation come. This is not a problem if the matter is serious. And if the matter is not serious, it doesn't matter too much.
Now we have a US government who's targeting Wikileaks and volunteers of Wikileaks, even former volunteers like the Dutch former volunteer Rob Gongrijp. They want this Twitter account, for instance. Do you think the Dutch Parliament should stand up for people like him and try to protect him?
The Dutch Parliament must stand up for its citizens, and especially citizens like Ron Gongrijp. This is a man who has dedicated half his life to fighting for good causes of one kind or another, a successful businessman who helped start the internet in Holland. He is a model Dutch citizen, and if it cannot stand up for someone like Ron Hongrep, can the Dutch Parliament stand up for any person in Holland? I know Rob has told me that the reason he's a former volunteer and not a current volunteer is entirely due to the extradition act of Holland, that it is very unfair in relation to the United States, doesn't require the United States to provide evidence of wrongdoing. And so there is a view that depending on the political situation in Holland, which is fluid and difficult because you have parties like Geert Wilders parties rising up, that if the United States asks for a famous Dutch activist to be extradited to the United States, perhaps the Dutch government wouldn't apply a political exemption. Perhaps it would just allow one of its people to go off. That is not a tolerable position. And it is quite interesting, why was that position ever permitted?
He's a former volunteer, but he still feels responsible for his fate and for others who used to work for you?
Yes, very much so. I mean, even in this case of this alleged source, Bradley Manning, our infrastructure is set up so we don't know who our sources are. It's very deliberate, because when you're dealing with intelligence agencies, for sure you will be infiltrated from time to time. So the only way to really absolutely protect sources, is to make sure you never know who they are. So you just simply do not keep those records. You never even collect them. But we feel, even in that case, some kind of responsibility, because there is a young man, Bradley Manning, who has been in prison for 230 days now, in solitary confinement, in the most severe prison conditions in America. Has not gone to trial, may have nothing to do with this, may have everything to do with it, but he has been embroiled somehow in our publishing activities. And the same with Ron Hongrep. He has been embroiled in our activities.
Bradley Manning has been suspected or been accused of leaking the material. Wikileaks made a donation to his defense. Do you acknowledge with that he was the source?
No, and in fact, I have never said that we have donated money to his defence. But he is a young man, as far as we can tell, a nice young man, who has been in prison for 230 days now, as a result of us publishing. If we hadn't published this collateral murder video, which he is accused of being the source of, he would not be in prison. We don't know whether he is a source or not, but for sure he would not be in prison if we had not published, because there would be no sort of incentive for the US government to try and save face by finding someone to prosecute.
So is the story about the donation not correct then?
That's not something that I wish to go into.
We're talking about volunteers being targeted. Yourself are being targeted, obviously, by the US government. You had threats. Do you fear for your life in that sense?
We are forced to take arduous security measures. There have been calls, yes, for my assassination and the assassination of my staff, and for the illegal kidnapping of my staff, and threats against my children. Those are not threats simply coming from enraged former members of the military in Texas. These are threats at the highest level of Congress and the political and media sphere in the United States. I mean, there has been commentators on Fox News in the United States calling for my illegal assassination. They use the word illegal, calling for, saying, well, you know, it would teach people a lesson if a bomb went off in one of our cars. Sarah Palin said that we should be hunted down like the Taliban, and there are 3 bills that have been proposed in the US Senate or in Congress to label us as a transnational threat, so we could be treated like enemy combatants, to attack our financial infrastructure. A call just this week by the head of the Homeland Security Committee, Peter T. King, to add us to an embargo list, the same sort of embargo list that is used for terrorists and dictators and Cuba. And to do that in order to suppress my upcoming book, which has been published by Knopf in New York, to prevent Knopf from engaging in that kind of economic activity. So to actually suppress a book. So that is something that is very revealing about how the Western Empire, and it's not just a purely American phenomenon because it spreads into other parts of the West, how the Western Empire deals with real free speech, real dissent. Well, it does everything that the former Soviet Union does. In this case, we have seen PayPal being pressured by the State Department to cut off the ability of people around the world to send us money. Visa, the same. MasterCard, the same. Even the Swiss Bank, Swiss Post Finance, also cut off. Western Union, money bookers. So these attacks against our financial infrastructure, which have happened entirely outside the court system, is something that has actually been hitting us quite hard. We're still going, but that's eaten up several years' worth of budget that we would have otherwise have had. There's a great outpouring by people around the world who want to support us, who want to defend us, and who are trying to give us the resources with which we can defend ourselves, and in the process defend them by getting them the information that they need in their respective societies. And that process is being interfered with outside any judicial system by pure political and governmental influence. And this is not just me saying this. Politicians like Senator Lieberman in the United States have said, I did that and I was proud of it. And some of the banks affected, Bank of America is another one that has cut off all transfers to us, has said in press releases that they have done this because of the accusations against us.
That does make your work as Wikileaks in many ways very difficult. Are you still getting stuff from besides Cablegate, setting in more stuff in which you could reveal? And what are you going to reveal about the Bank of America? What's been rumored a lot about that you have stuff on the big American bank.
Well, it's been rumored to be Bank of America, and rumored to be Bank of America before the Bank of America blocked off all financial transfers from any one of its customers.
But you have stuff on a big American bank, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't say which bank, because that would permit that bank to try and work out how to spin the message for when such information comes out. But we normally do that. I mean, in February 2008, we had a big court case in San Francisco where the Swiss bank, Julius Baer, the biggest private Swiss bank, tried to cut off our domain name, and in fact did cut off our primary domain name for 10 days until we came back with a strong coalition of lawyers and conclusively won that suit. Well, the Swiss bank whistleblower allegedly involved, Rudolf Elmer, he faces prosecution in Sweden on the 19th of this month, in just a few days, in Switzerland, in just a few days, for breaching Swiss bank secrecy law. He allegedly revealed how this bank was evading taxes by using the Cayman Islands offshore centre. And that is an example from 2 years ago of a bank attack on us and our exposing of that bank. But there's been many of these legal cases by banks against us. So that's part of our normal work. It is not an exceptional case.
You don't think it scares off people to come up with new stuff to you, so you're still getting stuff in from people, despite people being targeted?
Yeah, even more things than normal. I mean, generally speaking, the more publicity we have, the more people are stimulated to send material. In both these two cases that I talk about, Bradley Manning and the Swiss bank case, there is no suggestion in either of these cases that these two individuals, if they are the sources, were exposed by us or anything to do with us. Rather, in the case of Rudolf Elmer, I believe that he now, to get more attention to his case, that he puts his hand up to say he was the source. And in the case of Bradley Manning, the allegation is that he spoke to a US journalist who betrayed him. But as far as we're aware, there is no allegation that WikiLeaks and its technical and political process has ever resulted in the exposure of a source.
Thank you very much.